confusing to me, especially in my market in Nevada.
Yeah.
If our concentrates test over, I think it's like 83% or 84%, something like that, they have to go into half grams. They can't be a full gram. So I go to a dispensary and I buy 4 grams and it's testing, where most concentrates test. I'm getting fucking 8 boxes. That's 8 state stickers. That's 8 fucking labels. That's 8 fucking Mylars. That's 8 jars. Like,
do you smoke flower?
Yeah.
Yep. Careful, it was shitting a little bit on me. That's crazy. So there's no bulk. You can't go buy a baller jar.
No, not in Nevada. If it tests over 83 or 84%.
Yeah.
So distillate carts.
Yeah. So this doesn't affect the rosin guys.
No, not at all.
Just kidding. But that's fucking wild. So they're all half gram carts.
Or 0.9.
0.9. That's the fucking.
So it's fucking weird. You know what I mean? It's like
you gotta
if it's above 90,
you gotta love a good loophole.
Yeah, they're 0.9s or 0.8s. You know what I mean?
But I mean, fuck, we had some fucking local that did what was it, a 6 gram cart? Fucking something crazy like that. Yeah. So I mean, I don't advise that. But yeah. I just couldn't imagine.
6 gram cart. I don't want to smoke that. I don't even like fucking full gram carts. Well, look, think about it. The oil's getting reheated so many fucking times. Well, it's not meant to be consumed like that. And that's why I say high end hash. I don't believe high end hash really belongs in a vape hardware, but just because of that.
Ooh, that is
like if you really want to smoke high, like people that really care about quality, they're dabbing, in my opinion.
Yeah.
In my opinion. And I like to decarb and do all that. And then you're going to be reheating it. Let's say it's a gram cart. That oil is being reheated so many fucking times. Yeah. Halfway through it, you lose essentially all the flavor. That's why, like, especially with rosin, there's like rosin carts are fucking worse.
We're forcing degradation. You know what I mean? Every time you heat it. So you're kind of, accelerating the degradation that would normally would take years and years and years. You're accelerating that. So yeah, no, I could.
Not only do we heat it to put it in the cart, right? But now it's a gram cart, and you're just how many times are you gonna reheat that?
It's I don't think the oil's crazy you say that, man, because I've been on some rosin carts lately from a local place, and it's
tastes like shit.
I have a bunch of almost done deadies that I just don't want because they towards the end, like the last quarter of it, just sucks, and they're expensive.
So I have actually a theory on that, and I think I might have told Josh, but
yeah, it sucks.
I don't think so. You're not exactly heating all the oil. With the way a cart goes, you're heating a coil or whatever, and you're not exactly heating all the oil. There's obviously oil towards the top or whatever, not on that making contact with the plate. You're slightly heating up all of it. Granted, it might get warm, but the real heat's coming from that coil. So what I think makes a cart taste bad or kind of fucks up your oil is actually the amount of kind of build up resin, whatever, that forms on the actual coil. So, and if you think about it with rosin, it happens so much quicker with a rosin cart because of the fat and wax content, the lipids and paraffins. So, it almost that is my theory. That is my, whatever, fucking let me know if you think different. But that's my theory on why a cart ends up tasting inferior. Is not necessarily the heat, the multiple heating times.
That makes sense.
You're building up a type of resin, a type of whatever build up fat.
Whereas
wax.
if you were dabbing, you would be cleaning that out every time after. Yeah,
correct.
That makes sense.
So and the reason I know this, and Jess just pointed out how I'm a fucking savage or a human distillation machine, is I dab so much that I don't necessarily clean out my rig every dab. Or I just take it up another heat. So of course I start bottom heat, you know what I mean, on my puff coat, but I just usually heat it up. Go to the next.
You're a fucking savage.
Yeah, go to the next one. Go to the next one until I've basically vaporized all the oil. Well, yeah, the fucking red and white don't taste as good as fucking blue and green, and I go through all the fractions of the dab, and yeah, but at the end, as Doc would say, sometimes you just gotta get high.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And that's really all you're after. And if you looked at that panel that we posted, that Jess posted from Vegas, and the scientists kind of talking about there's more THC at the end of the joint or whatever because of the resin collection. It just depends what your goal is. You know, if you're smoking for taste and flavor, clean that motherfucker out right away. But if you're just at the end of the day fucking, you know, consuming cannabinoids, and that's the true goal.
I say most people are, you know.
I mean, fuck, we all, And
I just took a fucking tea break for the 20 days was like the longest I've done a long ass time. But yeah, I was going through a gram of hash every day. Sometimes open another jar. It's like, fuck, dude, I need to chill the fuck out. You know? Like I don't think that's. I don't need to be doing that.
God, I shouldn't tell him my intake. I'm at probably about 2 to 3 grams a day.
Fuck.
A cart. That's why like a 1 gram cart will last me about a day. But once again, I'm fried. Like my receptors are fucking fried. Yeah. And by the way, welcome to the Pharm table.
Thank you, man. Thanks for having me, man. This is awesome, man.
Very cool. You know, it's always exciting when we have a fly-in guest. You know, we're small town, you know, Albuquerque, New Mexico boys, and a lot of people don't give a fuck about this state. You know what I mean? A lot of people think we're fucking another country. You know what I mean? So to have, you know, friends in the industry, to have, you know, experienced pioneers and legends like yourself, actually fly in, you know, pick up from the airport style. It feels really good for us. So thank you.
No, thanks for having me, man. Thanks for inviting me. I'm excited to fucking be here. And like I said earlier, man, I love all the content that you guys have been putting out and everything that you guys are doing. So anyway, I can add value and be a part of it, man. Yeah.
Both Jesh and I are a fan of your content. You know, we really judge all the other guys in the industry on what they put out because we try so hard. Jesh is an artist. We try so hard to put out crispy, good media, from the video to the audio to the, you know, fucking macro shot.
It shows, man.
We really try, you know, unless it's me on my cell phone and I've snuck something past Jesh, you know, anything that goes through our media department, we really try to make quality. And, you know, from our cut downs, you know, everything. And so, your stuff really stuck out to us because, you know, you had the captions, you had the little images, you know what I mean? You have cool lighting. And not only that, but you're making points and your stuff is very informational. So
appreciate that.
Yeah. Kudos to that. Like I said, me and Jesh are both fans. And with that, why don't you introduce yourself for those people that don't know who you are?
Yeah, for those who don't know, I'm Erik Extracts, founded a company called Extraction Academy. We focused on in-person classes, extraction classes since 2016. December 2016 was our first class. We had one person in there, and it kind of just grew from there.
Were you one of the first then? I mean, there wasn't many in 16. I know there was
at the time.
What's his name? But
at the time there was Omar.
Yes.
And
that's who I was thinking.
Oh God, no.
There was Omar and Boris, I think, were teaching classes together, and I don't know what exactly happened with them.
That relationship ended horribly.
I don't know all the details.
I'll tell you after.
But yeah,
I've heard stories, man. Characters, right?
How fucking cool! Both crazy characters. Both of them friends of mine.
Necessary characters for the industry for sure.
Whoa, yeah. You know, shout out to those guys. They've been in the trenches for a while.
We're doing our bread and butter was our intro to BHO class at the time, 2016. We've taught over 1,000 people in that class.
That's impressive.
Like that have flown to Las Vegas, you know, from all around the world. Craziest one was a guy came from Guam, and I'm like, and we have a map in the lab, right? And we have these little pins, so like people come in, you know, represent your hometown. I'm like, look at him, like, you know how fucking small Guam is?
He's not allowed to be doing that there.
You know how small Guam? I'm like, well, you just coming to Vegas? You're looking for things to do? He's like, no, I came here for this class, and I'm just like mind blown, right?
No, motherfucker, I'm here to learn.
Yeah, and just to see,
I'm trying to go make some money in Guam,
right? And you know, Thailand, and you know, we had people from Thailand well before, you know, the kind of like the rush, right? Austria, like just all around the world, Colombia, you know, everywhere, right? All over the United States, a ton, you know, from California. As pretty much as a new state would pass, we would see an influx. You know, Oklahoma passed, and it's like the next 3 months class are just all people from Oklahoma, and so we have a wide cast net of alumni spread out through around the world that have reach out to me to this day and are like, hey man, I took your class and you changed my life.
Oh, I'm sure.
And it's like, for me, like hearing that shit is like, I'm like, yo, I feel like I didn't do shit. Like you invested in yourself. You flew to Vegas.
You had a business idea. You threw a class and you did your job.
Right. All I did was provide the platform for you guys. But what I would always love is seeing just the networking in the class. Right. You get all the you get a group.
Oh, the friends you've made, I'm sure, and connections you've made over the years.
You get a group of trappers next to a guy who owns a license, next to a guy who's an actual lab tech that was sent there by his boss or whatever. You got the bud tender that wants to add skills and is just like, I want to learn something new, and they come and take the class, or just a real weed nerd. And then you have all these people interacting in the class, and we're talking about making fucking oil and doing extraction, which is something I could talk about,
well, more than anything,
day,
it's one thing for us to nerd out and have some shop talk, because like it's what we do, you know what I mean? But for other people to be interested, that's a good feeling. I love when I'm doing a lab tour or teaching somebody or whatever, consulting, and people are actually like jazzed about it. So the cool thing about your class is, they paid, they made their way out there, they traveled, and they're super serious about it. And I mean, as an extractor, as a nerd, as a fucking cannabis nerd, whatever, I mean, there's nothing better than having somebody that's like interested in what the fuck you got to say, because you're going to say it no matter what. Like you said, I'm a fucking hash, fucking oil. But most people are just like, what?
Right.
So to have somebody locked in, that's cool. That's a great feeling.
It's such a small community. Like cannabis is like small, right, in general, and then you take a niche of that, right? You talk about extraction, you take a niche of that, and that's BHO, right? Specifically, there's a point in time where there's surely more rocket scientists and
what did we talk about that with? Was it Dirty?
Right?
Was it Dirty or Cam that we talked about how small of a group extractors are among the world?
Both. That was something that came up.
It is, bro.
Such a small community.
Like welders, electricians, fucking painters. You fucking name it.
In Vegas,
diesel mechanics, you name it. There's millions,
right?
Or whatever. To fucking Google it, but. There's a lot, but you talk about extractors, and then shit, you're talking. What did I guess? Like 1,000, and whoever I had on the podcast was like,
well, you guessed also in Vegas on a panel,
okay,
at Planet 13, and I think it was like you
shouts
guys
out
came
Planet
to the
13.
conclusion that it was in the hundreds.
Yeah, just a little memory help for me for
it's the side effect of being awesome.
You and Dirty thought like 1,000.
But it is such a small fucking group. And then among the world, holy fuck, you were a little pin.
Yeah.
And that's why groups like the Good Life Gang are so awesome and so important, because we've managed to keep a lot of the pioneers and, the guys in the industry kind of together. Granted, there's been people that aren't in the group or, have left the group, but they've managed to keep that group together, and we're still able to network. I actually first met you years and years ago at a Good Life Gang meet in Vegas. I think it was at the mansion with like the koi pond.
Yep.
Yeah. And anyways, and so look at us, fast forward, that was probably 5-6 years ago. I can't remember now, but it was a while ago.
Yeah.
And fast forward now, we're doing a podcast, and we're both still in the industry. Super cool to have you on. We've never actually had a educator, so a kind of. I mean, we've had guys that did consulting, of course, but
right?
but never somebody that actually turned it into a business. You actually did I was super impressed because you actually did a textbook.
Yeah.
And we kind of briefly talked about that, but how that could, did you bring it? Yay! I'm fucking pumped. I want to see it. So that's one thing. And the reason I guess I'm jazzed about the concept and that you did that is that was one of mine and Jesh's first kind of ideas on something we wanted to do. But this industry's kicked our fucking ass. Fucking that's amazing. Yeah, it's right.
Yeah, I'm pretty pumped on it, man. It's my main goal in focus with that. I mentioned we've done only in-person classes, right? And sure, we had, a presentation and a PowerPoint, and we gave resources, and we had a student portal on our website where, students could go, but we didn't have anything formal that was so standardized. Right. And that's like the main mission and goal with this. That's rough version. I still have to do some edits, but
no, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is awesome because
Thank you, man.
Here's the thing. One of my goals, our goals in this industry is to get people to take us fucking serious and get the medical industry to fucking take us serious, to erase the stigma that there's anything fucking wrong with cannabinoids or cannabis or fucking really any plant out there that fucking grows. And this is one of the key points that one of the key things that needs to be done to battle that stigma, because nobody's going to take us fucking serious until there's multiple editions by multiple people of things like this. Like, we have to write it down. We have to put it in black and white. We have to hard back it. We have to distribute it to, in a sense, I hate to say it, the masses, which scares all extractors. Like, don't keep that group small. Don't tell anybody. But if we ever want the kind of country, society, the medical society, the medical industry, if we ever want them to take us serious, we have to start approaching it like this.
100%.
So no, kudos to you. That's fucking dope.
Appreciate that, man. There's a lot of work that went into it. We talk about how small the extractor, group is, right? I think that was one of the things too that, we've always been about is just no gatekeeping, right?
Yeah.
Like, you come into our lab, we're teaching our classes, we're showing you the exact equipment we use Monday through Friday. We're opening our doors on the weekends,
which is the
teaching.
Consultant's nightmare. They're like, gatekeep it, bro. Don't say anything.
Right. And this,
charge more.
I made a video recently about how, we used to put duct tape over our oven temperatures, and it's like, I've been there, you know what I mean? But when we started this in 2016, it was like we were doing the opposite at a time when everyone was gatekeeping. And so talk about like Omar and Busy they were kind of doing it, but I know Lab Society too was doing distillation classes.
Fucking Elliot was making people
blindfold.
Sign. Yeah, dude. He was like, he wouldn't let people post pictures of his equipment on social media.
But he also got ripped off a ton.
Oh yeah. I'll give him that.
Like, like his designs have always been the best. I've always rocked Summit Glass when I was running Short Path, and
we're Summit boys too. Just so you know,
he's also a necessary character for the industry. That he's one of those people that depending on who you talk to, might say different things, right? But I've only had good interactions with him, and so. I've heard the stories and all that, and we could laugh about it and stuff now, but I would say that he was probably the most ripped off, if not one of the most ripped off persons in the industry.
I will say something, and
shout out to him for that.
I will say something, and hopefully this isn't what gets me canceled, but Elliot is my friend, and he's always been a huge help and a great person to talk to. Yeah. And I think he's incredibly misunderstood.
I would agree with that.
I think his mind is incredibly misunderstood. And I think, he has some ways of delivering and communicating that might not be, everybody's best choice or everybody's, favorite way. But I think he is a decent guy, and I think he's a very smart individual. And I think he's done.
There's no doubt about that.
I think he's done a ton for cannabis distillation, cannabinoid distillation.
For sure.
I think that, granted, there was obviously distillation, way before Elliot came along, but I think he's definitely done a great amount for focusing on cannabinoids when distilling. I guess that's a better,
sure.
or making equipment to distill.
100%.
And his designs, his blueprints have been just ripped from fucking nation to fucking nation.
Yeah.
So that would piss me off too, and that might put me in a fucking defensive, fucking not the best communicating fucking position.
The thing about it though is, knowing what we know now about the industry and seeing how much like energy and like potentially financial, loss there is with fighting for it. You know what I mean? With fighting people, and the inner fighting in the industry is like a total waste of energy for me.
I guess that brings us to fucking something we should probably talk about. And what happens when, so I guess let's start it this way. When you start your company in cannabis, especially if you're a small operator or, Joe Schmo, extractor like me and you started, when you start your company, all your energy, time, money, and focus is in building that company. And if you take your fucking hand off the fucking throttle, you're going back. You're changing the direction, progression, whatever of your company. So yeah, let's go back to what you said. When you start fighting, and a lot of times it usually starts with partners. You know what I mean? I think that's the most common lawsuit is,
for sure,
we were partners, we had a deal, one of us didn't do what the other one thought we were going to do or what the contract said, and we're in court now.
Or there's some ego, most of the time it's
definitely
ego.
Oh God, if this isn't the land of the fucking
silly shit,
if this industry isn't the land of the fucking dick contest, I don't know what industry is. Maybe horse racing, but a lot of times these companies and these key players in our industry end up in litigation with someone they were close to or someone they went into business with. And what does that do to a company's forward progression? And I think it's fatal in a lot of senses. And we just saw one of the biggest companies in extraction just fucking phase out, And if you're not following ETS, you know what I mean? They're gone. I'm a certified ETS operator myself. I don't know if you are or not, but yeah, I'm in the book. I'm in the data book that fucking, doesn't mean anything anymore of ETS alumni.
I don't think I'm in the book. I'm not. I don't think I'm in the book.
Yeah, no, I think I got a certificate. So
yeah, no, I haven't done that, but we've had, it's ETS was massive, right? Yeah. ETS was massive. I would say probably 80% of our alumni had an ETS or went on and bought an ETS.
So you have big connections to them.
Huge connections to them because we've talked people, through them or why they should maybe consider some other options, that we were more, inclined to use. Because we weren't running a ETS. I mean, the best
we run Busy Bee if you didn't know.
Yeah, that would be the ideal choice for like the real hash, extraction nerds, right?
Yeah. That's what I thought, anyways.
But there is no ideal system, or the ideal system is the one that the extractor who's using it designs himself the way that he likes it for the job that he's doing, for the production throughput that they need to do, right?
Well, and at the end of the day,
that's the perfect system.
You get something good and you run it cold. I mean, the rest is just fucking.
You just pour a little tain over it, make sure it's cold, and collect it, and yeah. I know some guys, actually some rosin guys in the industry that keep a little fucking 2-pound column, 1-pound column, and a little old system in their spot because some stuff blast those
just
pucks.
don't wash. Well, no, some stuff doesn't wash.
Oh yeah, that's
and so they're in there stuff in little columns and with dry ice, the old school, and yeah, dude, they're making amazing shit just in the shittiest, most rudimentary, original system.
Back in the day, it was like all open blasted shit, right?
Yeah.
Like your company always
don't open blast.
Do not open blast. Absolutely not.
Fuck.
However, the company I first was working with, Terpex, I don't know if you're familiar.
Yeah.
My roommate from college started Terpex, right?
Yeah.
So, that's how I got my start in the industry. It was like I said, I moved to Colorado in 2014 when it went wreck, just packed up my car. I had fucking $200. I just graduated college. I was like, I'm going to go make it. You know what I mean? So, that's how I got my start. But before they got into Colorado, it was all just backyard boogie, right? But we were winning cups all around the world. This was when high times cups were like the thing, right? So 2011 LA, 2012 Amsterdam, 2013 Secret Cup, all these
Secret
cups.
Cup, man. I was about to say
Hot
Secret
extract,
Cup,
right?
baby.
So we're that's what we're winning, back then, and that's when I say you couldn't really necessarily buy a cup, but there was also not as nearly as many competitors as there are now.
No.
So
and we didn't know
People were
nearly.
also judging on red hot titanium domeless
Oh,
nails. So.
hot extraction on hot
Valid,
nails.
sir.
Hot extraction on hot nails. And back to open blasting and kind of that concept, and where most of the old BHO guys had to have come from. Because at one point there wasn't systems, you know what I mean? And thankful to the ones that said, hey, whoa, fuckers, chill out. Let's do this safe.
Yeah.
That changed all of our, directions at the time. But yeah, open blasting was an extremely dangerous way to make butane or BHO, honey oil.
But let's talk about the concept of open blasting, because this was before people were doing soaks, right?
Correct.
So this is just a quick wash, right? You're just
a rinse.
It's just a rinse. So you're literally just grabbing like the lightest, right, compounds that the best compounds, and so it's just funny. Is it extremely dangerous? 100%. Another thing, you can't clean your gas, right? So you definitely have mystery oil, you know what I mean? So there's that factor in there.
Yeah, we weren't open blasting off a clean fucking 100-pound tank.
No.
You know what I mean?
No, absolutely not.
It definitely wasn't distilled.
Newport fucking, cans or whatever, right?
I'm guessing that's what was most of the high.
Yeah, I think I
get
used
fucking lit.
Viper or something like that. Butane.
Fucking mystery oil.
I always dropped the Newport, the white can.
Yeah, they had those at the smoke shop.
And
too.
I started looking at it later when I actually understood like why, and because back then it was just it's one of those things where it's like how I started thinking like, how do I get into this shit? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And we're just dumb enough to fucking we're just dumb enough to try to, you know what I mean, to work with butane, and like, you know what I mean, we didn't know the why, so like there's a lot more
when we quickly
science and understanding now, but we didn't really know what we were doing. We were just dumb enough to try it.
If you made it out without getting burned, you're lucky, because we quickly started hearing stories from fucking coast to coast of people that were catching on fire.
Oh, go on YouTube right now. You can type in butane hash oil lab explosion, and it's fucking terrible.
Yep. And you'll see a New Mexico
that's
video.
A big reason why we started Extraction Academy was safety. Just like, look, people are going to be fucking doing this. We want them to know how to do it safely.
Well, and that brings up a good point. Is if you search that, you're going to see a New Mexico video of somebody in the state that's using quote unquote commercial equipment, but using it in the wrong way. No ventilation.
Right.
Definitely not in a booth. I mean, you name it, there was wrong.
Electrical outlets everywhere.
Oh yeah, of course. And using a heat gun.
Oh, I've seen it. Heat guns are the worst. They're the main culprit. Can we ban heat guns? Can we ban heat? Let's ban heat guns.
First, you have to ban stupidity, because I think having a heat gun around butane is just stupid.
Right.
And if you don't know that, then you don't belong around butane. And so that's where.
But you'll be surprised. So from an education standpoint, from someone that's taught many people, whether that be in my lab, their lab, over FaceTime, it is scary to think about, right? Basic common sense is needed. You know what I mean? There's also a figure it the fuck out, but there's also the factor that anyone can do is they can go on Future 4200 and go and learn and research and do your own. You have to be willing to learn that. How many extractors have I come across that work with butane every day that don't know simple things like what the boiling point is, or what the LEL is, or
probably most of them,
or just basic practices, having even like pentane, stuff like that, out and open in the lab, and how volatile that is, right? And so that's a big reason why I wanted to create this, and a big reason why we started Extraction Academy in 2016 was safety. That like, people are going to be doing this job. Let's teach them how to do it properly instead of gatekeep this information. Let's make sure that our industry doesn't get a bad name. Because imagine this. Imagine every time you think of BHO, you think of a lab explosion. There was a period of time where it was like, oh, that's dangerous. Or I can't tell you how many, every class that we've ever taught, we always ask who here's experiencing explosions. There's always at least one person, or they know their buddy that their buddy has.
What's that? 3 degrees of separation or whatever.
I'm here because of that. You know what I mean? I'm here because of my buddy blowing up, and I don't want to blow up, but I want to do this job because here's an opportunity or whatever the case may be. So that's always been a main driving force for why we've been so open.
Well, and you've seen states not allow hydrocarbon extraction because of the ignorance and not understanding. And, one of my first mentors, or one of my early mentors, told me, he was a PhD, and he told me danger is subjective. And everything's fucking dangerous.
It's more dangerous to drive in the car on the way over here than it is to run a closed loop.
Don't get into statistics and kind of the final destination, fucking 5 million ways to die in the West, whatever fucking concept. Because like life is fucking dangerous.
Yeah.
Like danger is subjective, like 100%. Now, can you do quote unquote things that some people perceive as dangerous in a safe way? Of course.
Right.
And that's about control, and that's about safety, and that's about, proper training, proper observation, proper thinking. And I'll tell you right now, I've had a lot of employees come through now, being a lab owner, and there is only a handful that I would allow to extract, or to even go into the training of extraction. When I look for an extractor, I'm looking for a certain personality. And, they could be, any size, color, whatever, look they want, but I'm looking for a specific mind.
Right.
I'm looking for a specific brain when I decide that, this person should do extraction or might be able to help in extraction, and I want to, push them into that training kind of direction.
Can you explain a little bit about like what that brain, like what exactly like you're looking for, and what that
brain has to be fucking serious, number one. It has to be able to understand the concept of extraction, understand the different things that could or couldn't go wrong. They have to understand the chemical and really have a mind that can understand, flammability, that can understand the fire triangle. You know what I mean? Different things like that. Not everybody is the right mindset for extraction. The other thing is they have to be incredibly observant. And like I said, serious from the beginning. Not only have to be paying the fuck attention, but they have to have a mind that can go through a series of procedures, a series of steps, and then boom, 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 back and forth, be able to think through their head, okay, I did this, and this. Now I have to do this, and this, and be able to basically move and manipulate that solvent through thermodynamics through the system and understand what's happening.
Right.
You're going from a cold liquid phase to a warm gas phase to first you're creating a solution, then you're going to a warm gas phase back into a cold liquid phase. And I think that a lot of, your random Joe Schmo, that's magic in their fucking mind.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And they don't necessarily understand the concept and what's happening to what they're doing.
In contrast, and to clarify, you can teach that Joe Schmo who thinks that's magic to turn a couple knobs, and they could successfully,
Correct.
most likely,
and that's why
to complete the job.
The job. But do they understand the fundamentals enough to, one, prevent accidents when they happen? Whether it's phenomena or a random leak or something like
Problem
solving, and a deep understanding of the fundamentals that allow for those things to be possible when they're possible.
Yeah, we always like to say, when you understand why, you can figure out how.
Yeah. Well, and that's that high IQ level that,
It's an engineer's mind.
You talked about your friend that, your old partner or whatever, that was so smart, but he wasn't classically trained, but he could solve anything, he could figure it out. I mean, that's classic textbook high IQ, is that mind that can look at something, that can weigh the problems, weigh the solutions, and kind of put the whole thing together and piece that together. And I think when you have somebody that's operating or extracting it's one thing to fuck up the bubble bag and fuck up the ice water hash.
Yeah,
You know what I
the
mean?
consequences are a lot higher.
But it's different to fuck up the hydrocarbon.
Right.
Or to make a mistake in procedure. And so if you don't have an employee that really is not only highly intelligent, but able to understand
the fuck out.
Correct. And able to understand the dangers and the gravity of what he is doing and be able to operate in a very serious, safe way every single day. You know what I mean? I've had a lot of guys that were extractors that, were like, I only smoke at night, man. I don't even smoke weed during the day. I want to be on point, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at them and I'd be like, yeah, fuck. That's good.
I respect that. I respect that.
Fucking don't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Like I said, I just took a tea break, right? And it does affect, it does affect that. And it's just, you do this job for a certain amount of years. I mean, you can go in the lab with a blindfold and flip valves and do the job, correct, right? But and you're most likely to be able to figure out if there's an issue pretty quickly, right?
Yeah.
The more issues you come across and experience, the faster you are at solving those. Oh, I've seen this before, right? So it's just a matter of doing the job, right? You can come to a class or to get a consultant, but you're not going to really learn how to do the day-to-day. What this job really is problem solving and troubleshooting and fixing issues. It's not, that's what can happen on a run to run basis, not even just a day. So you go and take a couple dabs at your lunch break and you come back and you're not as on point, like you're saying with the, versus, if you're doing water extraction, or solventless or whatever, consequences aren't as high, but now you're talking about risking like everyone's safety in the building, and then especially if you're not in safe conditions, which, you should always be in.
Yep.
Which, I've taken a lot of walks through a lot of labs and I've seen some crazy shit, even licensed facilities.
Yeah.
Not just trap shit, you know what I mean? Like I've seen trap labs that are fucking built better and safer than some licensed facilities, which is fucking nuts. And then state to state, the different requirements, for labs, like, in our state, like ovens and, distillation and like VTA wipers, they don't need to be under ventilated hood. Yeah. So you can just rock them in the lab, and there's all types of, fumes and, that we should not be inhaling for 8 hours or 12 hours, however long you're running that thing all day. Right. And so there's just certain things where it's like, as we mature as an industry, things like some type of standardization, knowing what we know now, across the board, I think is important. And, some type of base understanding and fundamental knowledge. I mentioned Future 4200, great website. It's we're talking about what we're looking for when you're hiring people, right? That's one of the things that I've hired lab techs or what do you call them? Extractors, lab techs, extraction artists?
Lab technicians.
Lab techs? Okay.
Lab techs.
Yeah, I think lab tech's fine.
I never liked the artist. I guess I know artists and art has nothing to do with science.
You know what?
And
I would say for solventless, there's a little bit more nuances that I think could be considered more of an art. It's like where art would meet.
Would be an art or a skill set.
So I think to complete that,
I'd say nuance. I just say nuances.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's just, it's a little bit more.
Let's hear Jess's fucking
to complete the talk about
as an artist,
all the different
from an
things,
artist, from a real artist,
and somebody who really enjoys and is a snob when it comes to smoking hash, and been doing it for a really, really long time. I can say that like everything that we just talked about when it comes to the requirements of somebody to be an operator, that's in the context of safety. We just talked about it in the context of just not blowing shit the fuck up or resulting in massive loss or whatever it may be. But the person also has to have good discretion of good end product, which is subjective. And art is subjective. And so that's where the operator versus the artist is, when you have a genuine connoisseur who can take all of those things, do it in a safe environment, and fine-tune it to create an optimal end product.
That's the art.
That's the artist. Yeah. And I think there's a lot of wrench turners in the industry who do their job. And I think...
and there's no art involved.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair enough.
I think that's the difference is if you don't smoke hash and you are making hash, you are going to inevitably make bad hash.
Yeah.
Yeah. Going off of that, that's kind of one of my things with what I really enjoy about this job and just being in any lab setting, whether that be making BHO or solventless.
Yeah.
Just the uniqueness from batch to batch, flavor to flavor, working with new cultivators or working with, ones that you know are solid, but they're trying new genetics or they have new phenos or whatever. Like that's what I love about this job. Like I can be in the lab for hours and hours and hours if I'm doing that. This is where I have a beef with, distillate, even though I'm, competent in it, is there's nothing unique about a liter of distillate.
Correct.
It's just the same redundancy. It's like the same redundancy.
If it was done right.
There's levels to making it 100%.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying that. And there's definitely a skill. That's definitely just more skill.
I've definitely had some bad distillate, and then I've had distillate that was made right.
For sure. No, for sure.
which I guess you would call good distillate. You know what I mean? And that's not my first choice to vape or smoke. You know what I mean? But yeah, there's definitely
it's not going anywhere.
Yeah.
And if you have a production facility and you're not making distillate, I would say you're losing in some capacity. And so many people have spent millions of dollars into their distillation gear. It's not going to go anywhere.
Distillate, in a sense, is the base of commercial cannabis. You know what I mean?
It's isolated cannabinoids, right?
Exactly. And so if you go back to isolate, and I've had this conversation before with other people. If you go back to isolate, you know what I mean? Distillate is isolate, you know what I mean? In a sense, it's a very similar product.
Same.
And depending on the purity it's made at, whatever. But
one's just decarb.
Exactly.
That's it.
And depending on what cannabinoid it is, it obviously acts different in different stages, either in its acid stage or in its decarboxylated stage. So yeah, those products are the base of like we just talked about, the rest of the world taking us seriously and standardizing cannabinoids. If we're going to standardize medicine and cannabinoids, it's isolation and distillation. You know what I mean? And same thing with terpenes. Those as well are going to have to be, distilled to isolate, whatever, isolated somehow. And that's how we're going to have to standardize. That's the only way the medicinal industry is ever going to, the real, medical industry is ever going to take cannabis seriously. Now, will that be my preferred way to consume? No. And that doesn't have to be everybody's preferred
That's
way.
also not the best medically sound way to consume, right? Because we know that full spectrum is going to be the best way, right? So,
but until we study and truly research the different benefits and why is the full spectrum, so that the mentality of isolating and standardizing everything is figure out the full spectrum and recreate it,
right?
And properly recreate it. And now we're starting to really kind of push into what's in flavor. Like we just started talking about as an industry flavor. And we always talked about terpenes, and most people just associated terpenes with flavor. Well, terpenes are aromatic. And it's a lot more to do. Granted, they affect flavor, but it's a lot more to do with smell, and it's a different category. And then we started talking about shout out kind of abstracts. They really put in the money to research flavor, and we started talking about flavorants. We had heard about them, especially in the chemistry community, but esters, esters,
ketones,
thiols, aldehydes,
paratenes,
all this stuff is what we're tasting. Those are the flavors we're tasting. And then,
and where the color comes from, right?
Well, that's the flavonoids. And that's not technically flavor. And I was, shout out to, I think it was Miyabi that made Dr. Miyabi that made the correction. But a lot of people think flavonoids are flavor and flavorants are flavor because of the flav. Mm-hmm. Flavonoids are actually pigment. And, and don't quote me, look it up, Google it, but like anocyananthins and stuff like that, like those are flavonoids. And yeah, the flavorants, the stuff that hits our tongue and gives us that taste, that good, the different VSCs and tropical sulfur compounds. Parts. Yeah, all that is the esters, esters, thiols, ketones, all that good stuff. And that's where we're really seeing that research come into play. And that's fucking cool, because I feel, my opinion is, all that I truly smoke off taste usually. You know what I mean? I don't give a fuck about THC percentage or whatever, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
It's about smell and taste for me.
Yeah.
And so I really think there's a connection between those flavorants and terpenes that give us the feeling and the medicinal effect that you're talking about. That, oh, we can't recreate. We may not be able to yet, but if we can isolate all these substances and really dial it in and say, okay, there's this much of this in it, there's this much of this and this, and that's where the kind of pharmaceutical mindset or the medical industry is going to go after.
Yeah, for sure.
That's what's important, and that's what'll be important to.
We're gonna have ratios and formulas, and it's gonna be, here's your THCA. This is how much HTE or whatever terpenes you add to it, and that's probably how we're gonna be making concentrate in the near future. I would assume. I mean, people are already doing it, especially with the isolator coming out now, and I saw Dustin. Just talking about how he whipped up a batter with the
fatter, the fake batter.
Yeah. And so, but it's funny, but it's like, it's also like probably where, it would go, it's going to go,
And as a connoisseur and as a kind of premium extract mentality guy, that breaks my heart. And you know what I mean? And the only thing I can hope is, okay, there's people that drink fucking Everclear and there's other people that drink fine wine. And so hopefully there will always be
beer.
a craft need, because you're right. But the masses want it fucking cheap and fast. And man, if you could dial it in and tell them, fuck, this is for this, this is for this, this is for this, and take the fucking whole conceptualizing and understanding out of it for people, they'd be like, oh.
On the retail level, in most recreational markets, you walk into a dispensary, you just sit in the lobby, or you sit in the bud tender room. 8 out of 10 people are going to say, "What's on sale today?" They don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
They don't give a
sativa or
fuck.
indica. That's usually
next in line,
which is a whole nother can of worms,
percentage?
right? Sativa or indica, right? Because that has nothing to do with the effects. In my,
well, that goes
from what
back
I
to what we were
understand,
just
right? That's how
talking
the
about.
plant grows, right? That's all that means.
Yes.
Everyone has a different endocannabinoid system, right? So what works for me and what might put me down might be completely different for you, right?
Yes.
And so finding what works for you. And so I just had a conversation with a friend of mine who actually was the first person to ever sell me my first ounce of weed back in the day. Afgu from Grass Valley is fucking fire. But I know a lot more at this point about, cannabis, especially the, recreational market. And he was asking me for, his opinion. I said, well, what strains you usually like? And, he started mentioning some strains. I said, well, when next time you go and buy those ones that work for you, take note of
what it is,
and the main terpenes that it tests for, and look at the actual test results, and then find strains that are dominant in those. And that's how you should be making purchase decisions. Nobody in the world can tell me this is 20% THC, this is 25% THC, but I guarantee you'll notice a 5% difference in flavor, right?
Yeah. Oh, terpenes.
Right.
Oh, sorry. Oh, yeah. And if you
it's a massive difference, right? But like, so people, especially in Nevada, I speak on that market, that's where I'm based. 30% THC is what sells. If it's not 30%, then it doesn't move on, for we're talking about flower, right? And to me, it's like, man, I grew up going into the, shops in San Jose and Sacramento, and it was like, I'll buy like the ugliest looking kush that was just the ugliest looking fucking OGs and kushes that like might not have that bag appeal or that high potency, but you crack that nug and it's just fucking, it hits you in the face. And so it's just interesting to see how people make purchase decisions. And we know there's THC shoppers, right? But hopefully with enough education, we can have enough people seeking out other compounds, the other VOCs in the plant that make it unique. That's what actually makes it unique.
That's what we were just talking about. That's what we were just talking about. Flavor.
Otherwise, just smoke distillate.
Flavor and aroma.
Right.
I think the reason there's such a gap in the consumer education and the truly like misunderstood portion is bioavailability. Is people don't understand your body only absorbs, gets feeling off of, whatever, gets its kicks off of only a certain percentage of the THC you're even consuming. So past a certain level, it's just not bioavailable in a sense. And that's how I've understood it. Like I said, do your own research or whatever. But that's how I've understood it. And so I think that's where THC shoppers, they don't understand the other side of it. And that's the receptor tingling. That's the feeling like, why does this, you know what I mean? Why do I get hungry when, I have this? Why do I get sleepy when I blah, 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 whatever, add in how this makes you feel. And like you said, every strain, every different time, you smoke, you have, granted, people that have blown their receptors out like myself, no matter what I fucking smoke, it's pretty much, I go just after taste. And
you're going to knock that thing over to a second.
It's actually super fucking thick. It probably survive. But yeah, you got to figure out how it affects you. And it's really smart to start to lock in what's happening and why do I feel this way? Or, so many people be like,
I would say, especially on a medical level, right? So what kind of got my mom into the idea of, cannabis use, my aunt had pancreatic cancer.
Okay.
And so they tried everything, just to make her last moments, less painful. They, she did edibles, right? And whatever they were using in the edibles wasn't the right, strain, or it wasn't working for my aunt's pain. It was giving her mad anxiety. And I was like, okay, well, they didn't know that. So then they thought, cannabis was bad or it doesn't help or whatever. And then, come to find out a little bit later, they gave her some other, different, some different edibles made from a different flower, and it did work for her. And so that's really what opened up my mom, like even my mom's eyes, who, you know what I mean?
I wonder if it was
super against it.
Distillate to full spectrum. I wonder if it was maybe even something like that. Maybe, who knows? And that's where we need this further research. And that's where this was way back, probably 2009. Oh, interesting.
So this is a long time ago, but
so it was it was probably some gross.
Yeah, you know what I mean?
Crude oil.
Exactly. You don't know,
the
right?
tasty ones.
Right. No, the fucking worst. The absolute worst.
So yeah, who knows what in that compound was not helping her.
Right.
And I say compound because it was a bunch of different things. You know what I mean? And that's where, like I said, who knows? Maybe the second one.
That's what excites me still about the industry is we still don't know shit. Like you know what I mean? We know a lot more than we know now or we did then. Even in the 10 years of since, or I guess we're in year 11 now, since, Colorado 2014, right? Like knowing what we know since 2014 is
Was Colorado the first rec state technically?
It was Colorado and Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah.
They went right around the same time.
Yeah. I was like, I don't know who was first, but I think,
New Mexico is one of the first med states, and they were like 2007, right?
Yep. 2007.
Yeah. And so, but the program was completely underdeveloped until like 2014.
God, and it regressed.
Oh yeah.
It regressed worse than its starting point.
I grew up in California, and I had my medical card since I was 18. And yeah, it was much different times back then. But
would you consider that era, the Prop 215 era, the golden era of cannabis culture?
It's hard to say the golden era. I haven't lived through every era. I wasn't alive in the 70s.
Yeah, that was probably the golden era of fucking cannabis when it was.
No, I mean they were smoking. They were probably smoking some swag back then. You look at the fucking high times from back then, dude. They doesn't look appealing.
Well, that kind of shows you, and they got plenty high, and that kind of shows you that on 4 to 6% THC, like fucking shit. You know what I mean? And so
maybe the golden era,
testament to not needing THC as far as high testing results.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, but they smoked a lot, bro.
Yeah.
I was literally talking to my dad the other night about this, and he was like, oh man, we used to sit down in the studio for a mixing session, 6-hour mixing session, and smoke half pound of whatever fucking
8%
Acapulco or something.
Acapulco Gold.
I mean? Like,
the brown.
Yeah. He's like, oh man, there'd just be you'd leave the studio and they'd always get mad because you just leave a bowl of seeds on the table. I'm like, oh
yeah.
God.
I got caught in high school. I was selling, remember those little dime bags?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And
with the little weed leaves on them?
Yeah.
You get them at the smoke shop?
Yeah, I used to put them in an Altoids box, and or in the back of my cell phone battery. And the security guard who caught me at school, he's like, how much you selling that for? I was like, that's 10. I was like, it was 1 for 10, 2 for 15, 3 for dub. And that's how I rocked it, right? But it was all like 0.5s and shit, like they're like little 10, little 10 stack, 0.5, 0.6 in there. And he was like, shit, $10. He's like, man, we used to get a whole Ziploc bag for $10 and all this shit. And I'm like, yeah, some bullshit.
Getting shit talked.
Yeah, I'm like, dude, this is some fucking killer right here, man. You got me fucked up.
Man, I'm so old and fucking hood. When I first started selling weed, we were folding it up in paper. Fucking, and then after that, it was fucking Walmart or whatever, plastic grocery bags tied in little fucking dope bundles.
The fold over sandwich bags,
money
bro.
for fucking.
Yeah.
That's what we are kind of evolved into.
I had a flea market right in my neighborhood. I had a little flea market. So it was like, on Sunday, Sundays you go up to the flea market. They I'm like in there. I'm like 14. You know what I mean? I'm buying like glass pipes and shit. Like, I wasn't getting ID'd, you know what I mean? And like glass pipes and like whatever, accessories, I had my little smoke box, this is my freshman year of high school. My mom, I'll never forget it, 420. It was that Afgoo that I just got a fresh ounce of Afgoo, and I was like selling weed. I thought I was doing it, freshman, had an ounce of weed, you know what I mean? It was a lot. And my mom on 420, she found the fucking ounce. Ooh. And fucking, it was bad.
You're busted.
Yeah, busted.
So let's go back to that distillate isolate conversation. Well, that kind of brings up what we had talked about is the melted diamonds versus
liquid diamonds.
Liquid diamonds, whatever they call it now, whatever the kids are calling it nowadays. But what do you think about that? What's your take on that? What's your stance on that?
I saw recently someone posted like the death of distillate, something like that, and referencing isolate is
that's referencing membrane technology. So that is actually sci-fi that put that out.
Was that was sci-fi? Yeah.
And they're connected with Zev, and they have a membrane unit now for hydrocarbon. And so they're saying that basically with the technology through the membrane, they are able to, skip your distillation step skip all the steps before distillation, and basically give you a super clean, super high purity product through isolation, just like you said, but isolation's through membrane. Interesting.
Yep. Yeah. So I don't think distillate's going anywhere. There's like we had spoke about, there's too many people that have invested too much into their distillation equipment that it's not going to go anywhere. In Nevada, leaders on the wholesale market are still going for $4 a gram. And it's in high demand. Well, people are passing over liquid diamonds for distillate. And there's, with that said, the difference is, right? So oxidation it seems to be a big issue that people don't get right when it comes to liquid diamonds or melting their diamonds. And so there's that. I've had a big group in town, big brand that sells a lot of distillate carts.
So you're saying higher oxidation with the liquid diamonds?
Correct.
Okay.
What's the difference?
Functionally, it's the same thing. You have isolate, which is THCA, and then you have distillate, which is D9 THC. So to get to D9 THC, you just need to melt or heat the isolate, and then it turns into literally the same thing. If you had a liquid diamond liter next to a distillate liter, you wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
So they're being literal when they're saying liquid diamonds. They're just heating up diamonds.
Yes.
So, heating up sugar, heating up isolate.
Isolate powder.
Like
hard rocks.
So,
right?
just getting it hot, and it turns into essentially distillate or liquid diamonds. It's just a good marketing tactic.
So to clear up,
it sounds better than distillate or hot dog water.
So the exact process, Jesh, is they're creating isolate, BHO isolate, THCA isolate.
So separating the HTE, the terpenes, everything out, and you're just getting a high purity isolate where 90.
And they're distilling, and they're distilling that.
What?
That's it. They're distilling it.
They're not just heating it up.
No, they distill it. You have to decarb it. So I mean,
You can't just do that in the oven. They're doing it through a distillation unit.
Yes, Jess. You technically could fully decarb it without distillation. You would probably be crazy to not just distill it because of, I guess,
environment. Like
I would just distill it to decarb. You know what I mean? And then it's done. It would just be a low temp.
I've seen homies just on
distillation.
hot plates, open air.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Just literally like.
I guess you could. You're open air.
well,
that could be some.
Imagine that would be the problem with oxidation.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
That's the tech, bro.
That's not tech.
So at the end of the day, I think the best definition for the two is you have distillate, or you have Delta 9 from crude oil, and
So
you have Delta 9
activated.
Yeah, activated THC, Delta 9 THC. You have Delta 9 from crude oil and then Delta 9 from isolate. It's just two different starting points.
Right.
Isolate is obviously much cleaner and much farther along the line than crude oil.
Correct.
So I think the death of it is it's easier in a sense to preach that okay, just go isolate to D9, but they're not kind of taking into consideration all the steps to get it to isolate. And that's where that membrane system, makes some of those steps more efficient. They claim you can stop using chillers. They claim that you can do warm extraction.
Interesting. I wanted to go and check out their and go talk to them.
They invited me out there.
Yeah. I had spoke with them I believe it was on the phone, or
I think I'm going to do
maybe
it.
Instagram.
I think I'm going to do it. I'm interested in it.
Hit me up. Let me know.
There's some
I'll
energy.
go out there.
There's some energy rebates. That's pretty cool.
That was super cool. I saw that they were doing.
You know, and that has to do with basically ditching your chillers.
Yeah.
In a sense, and the chillers, creating the energy to make something cold takes a lot of energy. And it's just as simple as that. So,
which means it's expensive.
Yep. So, but their system's expensive. So, but
and that's another thing too, is who is retrofitting their facilities right now? Why did ETS go out of business? Right? Why
answers nobody.
Why are all other equipment manufacturers that have had
Hawaii.
system for a long time struggling right now?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like once you build out the labs, which, there's not going to be, if you think about it, like, I don't know how many labs are in this state, but in Nevada, I mean,
probably too many for the amount of people we have.
So for context,
we don't
right?
have that many that are
extraction equipment was big business because extraction
initially,
yeah,
yes.
And now everybody's established and everybody built the equipment so well and made it modular. People don't need new shit.
But also, there's no money right now, right? Like it's hurt. Like for the most part, many people are hurting right now. So if there's no money, how are you going to go and retrofit your system when you've already invested maybe potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe $1 million?
You remember BizCon of like
you're not going to go back
2018?
and go buy another $100,000 unit.
Yep.
You know what I mean? Not right now.
Do you remember BizCon 2018? It was fucking crazy. That was when Delta, it wasn't Delta. It was, I can't think of the name, but there was crazy booths. There was crazy equipment.
You went last year, right?
Oh yeah. And I didn't even go, but everybody told me how impressive. We filmed something at Planet 13. Check it out. But we did some stuff with, the Good Life Gang and Beard Bros. And so we didn't even go to BizCon, but everybody was like hurt about it. They said there was no equipment and it was dead.
I still had a good time. I mean, there's like specific things that I wanted to go see and you know what I mean? But like, I'm very fucking in it. You know what I mean? Like the average person, it was honestly, it was dead. Yeah. Right. And that's like kind of sign of the times. But for me as an operator in the lane that I've carved out by adding value to people that essentially don't have the experience that I do, right?
Yeah.
It's exciting for me because it's like with so many problems in the industry, like guys like me I'm a problem. Like I like to say, I'm a professional problem solver. You know what I mean? I'm still stoked on it. You know what I mean? And
there's still people that are trying to get into the industry.
I'm not saying that from a place of like, oh great, there's so many problems. Like, it's hard for a lot of people, but adding skills and understanding how to operate lean and efficiently and be able to come in and help people's businesses get on the upward swing is something that I enjoy doing.
Well, and I'll say, to add context to that, most of the people that said it sucked were extractors. and guys that, you know, missed there being a ton of equipment there and a ton of extraction equipment and it based, like going back to 2018.
Innovating
like,
is expensive, man.
Exactly.
If R&D is expensive, so like that's another thing I want to say, like mentioning ETS, right? Like I posted a video just basically saying, hey, they went out of business.
Yeah.
And you read the comments, it's just like all negative shit. And I'm like, dude, these guys took massive fucking risk for the entire industry. Not only that, they went out there and put their money and like built a system. You know what I mean? Was it a perfect system? No. But did they dominate? Yes.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And were they effective and do a lot of things right?
Yeah.
They're like, hell yeah. You know what I mean? So it's like to go and shit on somebody or to kick a man while he's down. Like he just went out of business and people are like, oh, fucking good riddance. I'm like, you suck, dude.
Well,
like that sucks.
What,
like you've never tried.
wild,
like that sucks.
Yeah.
That sucks for you to fucking say that. And that's on my post and shit. And I'm like, I read that and I'm just like, man, you don't get it, man. You know what I mean? Like you haven't put yourself out there, you know what I mean? To like take a risk for the industry and you know what I mean? And try something and see a lot of fucking success, which not a lot of people do ever in life. Yeah. You know what I mean? In such a short amount of time. So like I tip my hat to those guys, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whether or not how you feel about how the system was built, whatever. I made that video to raise awareness and I got my phone calls off the hook from people, my alumni, clients, people that I just are colleagues or people that are working the industry and they're like, what do I do? You know what I mean? I'm like,
it puts everybody
that was the point of the video
is
that I wanted people to call me because I know that it's going to affect a lot of people because they don't know. There's not everyone is fucking, you know, the consultant advisor guy, right? You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of people they went to ETS for everything.
Correct.
You know what I mean? And so they needed new gaskets. So like we can't go anywhere else. It's like they didn't even know places like Extraction Goods or HFS or Extractor Depot or these other places exist. Yep. California Extraction Supply. You know, these people that like they do this.
People
purposely.
don't realize how much extractors rely on their vendors and rely on their equipment manufacturers and the people that like they do business with day to day. So when one goes out of business,
everything.
Oh yeah,
everything.
And that's one of those things you can't assume that this person just has all these connections or whatever. I mean, they could have one of the biggest labs or facilities or operations, and they just had a guy, and that guy happened to just go out of fucking business, and it's emergent. It's serious. So no, I completely understand the concept and I've been there.
Yeah.
I've got a bunch of guys that help us out. You know what I mean? And we got people we could call. If they weren't there all of a sudden, I mean, what do I fucking do? Yeah. You know, I got to figure it out. We probably fucking figure it out, but yeah, there's like, it gets scary.
N Boiler, like shout out N Boiler. Like he's always done, custom. We've done a lot of custom, filters and center disc and all that type of stuff. But there's a ton of people that service it. But the point is especially if you're one of these an owner, you're like, well, we met ETS at MJ BizCon and we bought this unit off of them and everything we needed from them in regards to that unit or recertification or whatever the state compliance, whatever it is, there's a lot, like it's more than just the equipment, right? Like there's the training that you had talked about and like things that they provided that, a lot of people relied on that they don't even know what to do now that ETS, like, oh, I just called him or my email's bouncing back. Like, what do I do? And it's like, that was the whole point of me making the post. I wasn't trying to be.
What was the main negative response that you were seeing? Were you seeing something consistent?
People just shitting on the design of the system.
Fuck ETS was the main. That's not how I feel, but that was what people were trying to say.
That's what I mean.
The ETS guys are my friends, and like I said, I'm certified on ETS.
In different words, I mean, you can go and look at the post and read the comment. Read the comments. Like
it was that much.
I deleted some, but like I was like,
where do you think that came from?
I think that's they made an imperfect system. We talked about what the perfect closed loop system entails. So that went
for operator hate on their actual design.
For sure. Most people, most heads wouldn't be a fan of the way that the ETS operates.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They have, 3/8 inch lines. Like there's flaws in the system, right? And then they're everywhere. Yeah. Right. So like especially consultants are like, fuck, I have to deal with another ETS. Like you should have spotted. You want to know how to operate this more efficiently, buy something different, And it's like, that's not the solution, right? So it's like, but like that. So I would say like the real operators, real extractors are not a fan of the way that system
No, I
functions.
appreciate you explaining and where because I guess I said I didn't.
And then the ego. So we talk about the comments, the ego is like, oh, and the way that I made the video is I'm not trying to be the fucking evening news. I'm not trying to be fucking gossip hour. I'm trying to raise awareness because this is something that affects a lot of people. Right. And so the way that I kind of like made the video was just like, what are you gonna do if you own an ETS? And the point is, call fucking me. You know what I mean? Or call, you know what I mean?
And at the end of the day,
and if I can't do it, then there's a consultant or an advisor that is either on my staff or I'm cool with. It's a tight industry. I can be like, hey, hit up this person. You know what I mean? I've outsourced a lot of that. Shit.
The kind of guy that you seem like you are. If it brings you business, good. But half the times, if it's just you plugging somebody in,
I like connecting people.
Yeah,
if I can connect people, like that's fucking dope to me. And then see them do business together and like go off and win. That's a win for me.
You gotta love when you make content and it's just honest content and you just put it out there and it looks good and it sounds good and it works and you've got a ton of people that are like cool with it, but then you got those group of haters that are just like, fuck you. You know what I mean? Like this sucks. You suck. You know what I mean? And that whole mentality, like you said, is just.
Those people suck, those people suck.
The shiny part of that side of the coin is that it drives engagement.
Yeah.
No all publicity is good publicity.
100%, 100%. And so, like I said, you can go and read the comments. I left a lot of those comments on there, but a lot of it's like ego shit. Like, oh, who cares? Like, if, basically, who cares if ETS went down? There's other options. And it's like, yeah, that. But like the whole point of the video was to raise awareness for people that don't know that.
Here's a good concept.
There's so many other options out there.
Here's a concept. Me and Jesh have been talking about me and a lot of people, but me and Jesh specifically have been talking about the death of cannabis culture. And I think the first person to blame is usually the corporate cannabis and
Chads,
the Chads, they killed the cannabis culture. Now, here's another take. What if the fucking attitude, ego, bucket of crab fucking mentality that a lot of this industry has, what if that's helped kill the cannabis industry or the cannabis culture, not necessarily the industry?
So first thoughts is I would never allow a fucking Chad, a Thad, a Brad, or his dad to kill the fucking culture that is such an ingrained.
I'm not going to either.
Ingrained into my life since I was 12 or 13 years old, you know what I mean? And has been a part of my daily life, for 20 years. Like no one's ever going to kill the culture. Yeah. I think the culture will always be alive because of guys like you, because of the Pharm table.
Thank you.
This fucking podcast, everything that you do. You talked about Beer Bros, like the media side of things, right? Like they're on the offense. You look at to California, like Catalyst CEO Elliot, right? Like I don't think that like he's like single-handedly, like
we call him the other Elliot.
The other Elliot. Yeah, the other Elliot. He's like almost single-handedly like fucking killing off these Chads and like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's inspiring to see, right? But like, so I don't think that the culture's ever gonna die. I don't think it's ever gonna be killed. And especially I'm not gonna allow it to fucking, some Chad to kill us. I would never blame that. I think they infiltrated it, but I think especially right now with the way that times are, a lot of those people that don't really love this shit have fell off or closed their doors or are on their way out, right? It's like you kind of have to be blindly optimistic and like love this shit to a point where like you can get kicked in the shins 9 times and be like, yeah, let's fucking do it 10. You know what I mean? Like
if this fucking happens 27 more times, I am fucking had it. But right now I'm just in a little bit of pain and I'm fucking going back in.
You get it, and so that's kind of how I feel. Now, is it in a different place than where it has been? You know what I mean? Yeah. And then we talk about the golden era. Like it's hard for me to comment on that because I don't even know if we've reached the golden era yet. We don't even know.
Ooh, that's a dope concept.
You know what I'm saying? Like we don't even know what is the golden era. We could be looking back on this podcast in 10 years and be like, fuck, what were we talking about?
We didn't even know what was happening.
Right.
Fucking, now they want 25-cent fucking distillate carts.
So I would say the golden era is like in the future, that'll be how I would answer that.
I think a lot of my the Prop 215 era was the golden era is probably just nostalgia. Like when I was first introduced to hash,
Nostalgia always wins, man.
Yeah,
always.
and it just like that was the time when like
Just
it was
as a hippie.
new and awesome and fucking hash was exciting.
Yeah.
That and we might not ever get that. And I guess my question earlier was, are we being kind of attacked from our own members of the culture?
Let's go back to that.
You know what I mean? Are we being attacked by our own members of the culture just by hate and competition? Because now we're in this pool with all the fucking chads. And before, when there was enough love to go around,
No, they're in the fucking kiddie pool.
Well, exactly.
They're not in the same pool.
And I agree with that.
But what you're saying, 100%, the amount of hate, anybody that's doing anything in the industry, people feel there's a sense of entitlement. And that's what, that's what is, I think the entitlement with the mixed with the ego is
bad.
what really fucks people up.
Yeah.
Right. Because I could write this book and I post this, right? You know what I mean? I don't think I'm the fucking end all, know all. I'm just somebody that fucking took the time to do it.
Well, and that's why me and Jesh and I can't speak for him, but that's why we think it's so cool is because we wanted to do it and we didn't have the fucking time. And we know how extensive what it would take and the amount, from the transcript to like everything and kind of how you told me that, how you did it, and you don't have to tell anybody the tech, but you know what I mean? How you kind of came to it was functional for your business. You needed the other part of it and you're like, okay, cool. This is how we do this. And this is how I like drive this forward because I've already done all the work and all the steps and all this scripting basically, you know what I mean? And then that's how you landed on it. But still at the end of the day, it's fucking hard work. Yep. And people don't have the time or the energy. And so many people may have wanted to do this, but at the end of the day, they really didn't, or they didn't do it to that level or whatever. And maybe they're working on it. Fucking
yeah. With
cool,
that said, like, you had talked about how what you guys were doing, then you just don't have the time. Or I also I don't have like products on my shelf. Like you have 3 brands, right? Like building one brand is difficult enough. And you have Nero, the solventless side, and you have it's an Underdog. And Underdog as well, and Farmers, right? Yeah. So like that's a lot on your fucking, just running one brand is a lot on your plate, right? So I understand that. I don't have that. I white label and do bulk for a lot of people. It's like my time in the lab is a lot less demanding than somebody like yours.
Well, but I still respect
with the brand.
You
but
still have a
my
day job
only
and
time is fucking focused on that. You know what I mean? Was like literally just locked in for fucking hours. And I don't mind sharing how I did it. We've done in-person classes, since day one. And we never had the like something tangible to take from that. It's like we have to show up. I mean, sure, we had a PowerPoint or a keynote presentation and we have our talking points and bullet points, but we didn't have anything written down. We did it so many times that we would show up and it was the same class. And
old school consultant style.
It was more free,
show them how to do
more
it.
freestyle.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? We used to do like a book, but it was like, it wasn't like a ton of value, right? And so like we stopped doing that and we built a student portal on our website where we had processing logs and SOP templates and things like that as resources, but it wasn't anything like official, like that. So, when I took on this project of bringing this book is a spinoff of my online class. So I took the in-person class and I filmed and I took that and made it into a digital format in 5 different modules. But doing video content, as you know, this is a lot more open format, right? Where we're just having a conversation where we can just sit down and do it. But all my content is like, it's like scripted, you know what I mean? Because of the way that content it has to be presented now for it to be effective and reach the eyeballs that you need, right? And so coming up with hooks, for short form videos, scripts, concepts, like all of these things is something that I've learned. So it's like, in addition to extraction knowledge, right, I'm learning, how to storyboard, you know what I mean? And I'm learning how to build out a script. I had to actually write out, all right, I can't just sit in front of a camera and break down a complex concept and make it, digestible. Right?
Digestible, reproducible, whatever.
Right. And so I had to sit there and I'm like, all right, here's what I would normally say just for this slide, in an in-person class. And I actually had to write it down and then I had to tweak it into proper format to deliver it on camera. Then I have to like learn. It's like an actor learning the lines, you know what I mean? And, I have a teleprompter or whatever, but It's like one of those things, and then just making it into a digestible format is difficult. And that's
people don't understand that, don't do content or don't do stuff like that or educating or anything like that. It's much different to just talk and have a conversation with somebody, and even podcast. Like, it's much different to talk on a podcast.
like this is a skill. You know what I mean?
Well, yes, but it's once you get comfortable with it, it's a little easier. But I mean, me and Jess have done some more scripted stuff, and it takes me fucking, I don't know, 50 takes, 60 takes, you know, and Jess.
It's hard, man.
It's hard.
It's hard.
It's fucking hard.
Yeah.
And Jess is sitting there saying, dude, say this. And I'm like, nah. Another take. You know what I mean? And it's really hard to force your brain to like speak a certain way. It's acting. I mean, acting is not.
Well, yeah, you don't want to be monotone and dull because then it's boring as hell, right? Like no one wants to listen to a guy standing in a lab coat being like, you know, this is the.
Well, and no matter how much personality you have or whatever, once you fucking are reading it, or once that like you go into like on the camera, like boom, it's a completely different like fear and anxiety, and you're like, and you literally can lock up if you're not comfortable with like, yeah. So like, kudos to anybody that is a good actor, or you know what I mean.
Anyone that creates content,
and news person,
and puts themselves out there. Like I salute you, because I know it's hard, especially if you're running a business and that's like not your main. Like there's a job that's like just content creator, and that's all they do is create content, right?
Yeah.
Like that's a full-time job.
Don't start counting jobs, because then Jesh, he tells me all the different jobs he has and how many people we need. And
but there's people like you know, like Alex from Hashtag. I don't know if you follow Hashtag. They're, you know, solventless.
Yeah.
He also does a ton of content, and it's always like super dope to see, because he's running a full-time business, and then he's like also putting in a ton of work into his content. And
we love people that put out content.
Yeah, it's dope. And I just like respect people like that, you know, like mad respect, because I know how hard it is, and I know how much time goes into it.
I think I said earlier, we judge it in a good way, and because we know what it takes, especially what it takes to make something look good. Like, it's one thing to fucking iPhone fucking a dirty fucking lab or whatever, you know, cool. A lot of groundbreaking stuff has been shown to the world that way. But it's another thing to create a professional production and kind of release that to the world. That's a
part of branding too, though. It's a big part of branding. Like how, like literally everything, the lighting, how you want it to look, it's got to follow your brand guidelines, right? And that's just a bigger part of the marketing concept for the brand, right?
Let's talk about that. And we talked about it in the beginning. You told me, you know, that you do white labeling. Let's say that's your day job, you know, extraction, white labeling, and then, you know, this is your other thing where you teach, but you've branded it, which I think, you know, not to give the secret to the sauce, but you've taken something that not everybody would brand, you know what I mean? And you've actually approached it with a cool look. You rep your brand, you know what I mean? You carried it over into your book. And yeah, granted, you know, most classes or most consultants or anything like that, they haven't thought about that. They didn't brand it. You know what I mean? Which is another cool thing, because
they branded themselves. A lot of people have, which is
exactly
effective.
Exactly. Yeah. But, you know, at the end of the day, they don't have a logo. What I think is cool about this, and where my business mind comes, is when you decide you do want your own brand, when you find that perfect fucking market, EA Extracts, boom, you already did it. Like, you know what I mean? You already have a fucking logo. I could see it on a hash jar.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
thanks, man.
You've kind of, like, in my opinion, like, forward thought that to a level where, yeah, you took this serious enough to bring in branding to education. Like, very few people think about it that way. So that's dope. That's really dope.
Thank you, man. I really appreciate it. It's one of those things where education, like, it's not sexy.
No,
you know what I mean? It's like, you know what I mean?
But
it's
if
like,
you can attract
especially
people
like
to education,
especially what we're doing, right?
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? School, like, I always say this, stoners and shit. Think about like high school. Like, we were ditching class. Like, we weren't going to school. We were ditching class to go smoke weed. You know what I mean? Like, that's what the stoners were doing. So like, to do education for stoners or cannabis users is like kind of like a fucking oxymoron in a sense, you know what I mean?
Well, and I have
it's not cool. It's not like the thing, you know what I mean? So
I have so many guys that want to work in the lab. So they, you know, in the cannabis industry, if you have a manufacturing place, everybody looks at the extractor as like the quarterback or whatever. So every packager, entry level guy that comes in, they're like, oh, I want to extract. I want to work in the lab. Most of them, yes, are stoners by default. You know what I mean? They're whatever. When most of these people realize how much work and how tedious and, laborious a lot of lab work is, they quickly don't want to be the extractor. No. And they don't want to, especially the hydrocarbon booth. Like the booth is a cell in a sense where you're just, moving and cranking and monitoring and running fucking laps, pacing back and forth through it and checking. And so, yeah, when it comes down to lab work, there's wrenching, there's labor, there's washing dishes, lab work can be brutal, and it's a grind. It's real work. It's a 4-letter fucking word. Like, and when people kind of realize that, and it almost like kills like the quarterback feeling of it, they're like, oh, wait a minute, like that job sucks. Oh man, like it doesn't suck. I miss extracting. I wish I could, you know what I mean? But yeah, no, people mistake it for like the easy fun job.
And, that's the funniest. That's
and
hilarious.
Unless you're nerding out about it, unless it's fun because it's mentally stimulating to you, it cannot be fun.
Yeah.
Like,
No.
You know what I mean?
No.
So that's very cool that you found a way to make it attractive, I guess, at the end of the day. I appreciate that. And as far as the branded products goes, that's always been a goal, but our focus, I'm big on hyper focus. I talk about hyper focus, and so our hyper focus has always been education. And then from that, we have 1,000 alumni. So there's a lot of calls that I get even from people, hey, I took your class in 2017. I'm getting going in Minnesota or wherever, insert whatever new market. You're my guy. And so now my I love it. Yeah, I love it. But that's always been our focus. Like I was saying, like with you, it's like if I had 3 brands that I was running, that wouldn't happen. Yeah.
There's no way.
Yeah,
there's no way. And
I hear
so
what you're saying.
There's a lot of people that have approached me since I've, got this off the ground. I won't mention names, but other companies have approached me to help them, do their version of their course, which I think is dope. Yeah. I would love to house that under the EA brand and have it as an offering under my umbrella. But, regardless, I would love to help out because I've learned so much. I developed curriculum. I mean, this thing has quizzes, final exams, instructors manuals, like everything that you would think of if you go to a university level.
Well, we talked
course,
about that.
Right?
We talked about, at the end of the day, like this in itself could end up being introduced to university level teaching. And, I worry right now because you have cannabis classes popping up at universities. And I worry that there's classical education has always had a disconnect from cannabis because it's been underground, because it's been outlaw, whatever. So I always worry that when the university takes on the teachings of extraction, whatever, they're disconnecting too much from the culture and they could be missing things. They could be missing key steps. So aligning real culture with advanced academia and that world, I think is super fucking cool. And I wish you the best with that. I hope you get linked up. I hope there's a fucking, university of you name it right there on the corner one day and that it's introduced into curriculum because if we don't keep that culture connected, that's where it gets that's where it pushed out. That's the death of it.
100%.
And maybe too, that's another concept is if we don't put in the work, if we don't continue to put in the work to keep it alive, maybe that's where it fades out. And if we let the Chads or whatever, the Brads and their dads,
so someone's going to
take
do
it over.
Someone's going to write it.
Oh, fuck yeah.
There's over 100 colleges and universities in the United States right now that are offering some type of cannabis course. And most of them aren't extraction based, but my ultimate dream is setting up a booth and having a loop at fucking UNLV.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? At fucking USC, UCLA, you know what I mean? Like real cannabis labs on campus, which I think would be dope. We're a ways away from that, but like starting here, and I'm really trying to bridge that gap, but also just getting back to the safety and standardization of things. Like we got to have a baseline of knowledge for people that have been doing this job for 8 to 10 years. There's a lot of people still doing this job that don't know the basics, you know what I mean, of what solvents and chemicals are in the lab and what to be aware of, which is scary.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's what I always go back to. But as far as the universities, a lot of the courses that are being offered right now are like the business of cannabis, which is just hilarious in itself.
Yeah.
But you know, they're in, you know, other areas of the industry that are not necessarily extraction focused.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm really trying to be that standardized.
That's a really good point. I think a lot of people that are doing it these days, and a lot of people that have just done it certain ways for so long, aren't necessarily doing it the right way and aren't necessarily doing it the safe way. And I think there's a common misconception and a lot of bro science out there that has affected that. That could be, I got a name popped up right away. I got a name for the class. We call it Refining the Ratchet. And you know what I mean? And I think that, you know, as a self-identified hash ratchet myself, you know, it's taken a lot of refining to kind of get me to really take everything serious and be a better operator, extractor, whatever, and really look at it from that safety standpoint and liability as an owner, the huge liability standard. So yeah, no, that's dope.
Especially you got to think about like if you're getting paid, you know, $20 or less an hour.
Yeah.
And we're working with butane, propane, you know, the pentane oftentimes in just squirt bottles and shit in the lab. Like I wouldn't expect somebody who's making $14 an hour, $15 an hour to, you know, have the knowledge that I do. But we go back to like what we're looking for when we're hiring somebody. Like one of the qualifying questions is, do you know what future4200.com is?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like literally it's like, hey, have you ever took it upon yourself to be like, I want to learn more? Because that's a big part of this job as well. But it's kind of frightening to me that there's people that are operating in labs that don't know basic stuff. There's cooks and chefs, right? There's people that can follow an SOP and sure they can do the job, but you know, the chef is going to be the one that, you know, adds a little bit of salt or knows when to not add the salt, right?
Well, and like you're saying, I had a guy, I'll tell you a little story, real true story. We'll keep names out to protect the innocent. But I had a guy that had to filter some heptane solution that he thought might have some media in it. So he basically put it through a droid and reintroduced it to media, which I'm not sure why he did that. I could understand running it through the paper, and I could understand running it through the droid. But then he used silicone hose with the heptane, which anybody trained on hydrocarbons, which he was trained on hydrocarbons, knows that that's not compatible. You're going to melt those hoses. You're going to possibly contaminate the solution with fucking whatever juices off the silicone.
Right.
Look it up. Yeah. But yeah.
Chemical compatibility is important.
So I confronted the guy and I said, well, why'd you do this? You know what I mean? You knew better. You have hydrocarbon training. Granted, it was years ago, but you have hydrocarbon training. And he tells me, well, I knew. He's like, I thought that they weren't compatible, so I Googled it. And I said, well, what did Google tell you? And he goes, that it wasn't compatible. No, that I shouldn't do it. And I said, well, then why the fuck did you do it? And he kind of looked at me, you know what I mean? And so, you know, I walked up and I felt the hose right away when he told me. And I mean, they were gummy. And I was just like, you know, and this was a person that knew, you know what I mean? So never like get too cocky that you don't think you need, you know, a refresher or education. So I think refining the ratchet, you know what I mean?
Yeah, no,
teaching the experienced guys too, kind of a refresher on, hey, do this, do that.
I'd rather have someone that's never done this job before. They haven't had bad habits or they don't think they know everything.
It's so hard to unlearn things.
It's so hard. And then, you know, at my old lab, we did this. Well, here, this is how we do it. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's going to be different, right? Every process is going to be different. That's why, like, I have SOPs in here on how to do, you know, certain jobs, but it's not cookie cutter. You know what I mean? It's intended as a template for you to be able to write an SOP that makes sense for a state, you know, to get approved. insert and tweak, to your processes, because every lab is going to be a little bit different, right? And there's going to be different equipment used, and so tech might be, shifted into, using different tech for if depending on the equipment that you have available to you, right? But it's all about adding skills, to this job, and that's why like I salute for the adding the solventless line for you guys. I think it's super important to not be a one trick pony and just to add as many skills as possible. I think even if you're a rosin guy or a solventless guy or a solventless hash maker, there's information that would be helpful, that you can maybe apply back to your side of things that you can get from any extraction knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like my book is or my class is gonna do that, but the people that I think are making the best, like why is Dirty Arm killing it, right?
Yeah.
Like he understands at all sides of lab work.
Well, and
right?
he understands the market.
He does.
And I think you've got a guy that's so experienced in this industry and so culturally kind of connected and rooted in it that even though he did totally bash it at one time, you know what I mean? He knows the market.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, if you want to be relevant in the market, you have to stay in the market.
That's why I don't think it's smart to just be like, fuck this or fuck this, or you're a BHO guy or this or that. Everyone have your preferences of what we're smoking. So what, Piatella right
now. And this might bring us into our end subject. You know what I mean? Is real hash smokers smoke all types of hash, and I think that a lot of times BHO, butane hash oil, is often overlooked and not even considered hash. You know what I mean? And us as solvent guys, you know what I mean, gotta keep that alive.
Yeah, 100%.
Because it's all hash. You know what I mean? It's all fucking hash. It's all fucking hash. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say butane hash oil isn't hash. I understand where purist would come from when they say, BHO isn't hash. I think a more proper way to say it is just to make it, they're all extracts, right?
There you go.
Because rosin, even rosin is an extract of hash. You know what I mean? So
no. If you are a purist and you're looking at it that way,
correct.
Yeah, no, BHO is its own form of cannabis extract. And so, yeah, I guess you could.
But that's where you say you're like, how, like Frenchy Cannoli, right? Like rest in peace, Frenchy, right? Like he would even say that rosin isn't considered hash, right? Like I saw some clips of him talking about that where, it's like.
But then somebody could argue that his technique added heat and pressure in its own sense, maybe not the filtration. So if the filtration changes it, maybe that's, you know what I mean? And yeah.
This is where I'm like, we can spin in circles talking about this shit. At the end of the day, it's all extract. It's all concentrated. It's.
I guess don't use somebody smoking BHO as a way to out them or whatever from, you know what I mean, other rosin smokers. You know what I mean? It's all extract. It's all THC.
Well,
usually.
my thing that gets me is like the main comment: BHO is poison. BHO is poison.
Oh,
BHO is poison.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's one of those things where it's like, if you're gonna say that, then I hope everything that you do in your life is all organic. You're the healthiest person in the world. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You work out every fucking day. You don't eat any fast food, you know what I mean? Like, because you can get so granular with it, right? And that's where I'm like, that's just like if you're really concerned with that, you shouldn't smoke anything. If you're really concerned with poisoning your body, you should just eat. You should just eat your THC if that's you know what I mean? If you're really talking about health, saying a statement like BHO is poison
and distillate or isolate. Usually, if you really want to talk
poison,
about
right?
clean,
when people are saying that, I get that. And you talked about engagement. We talked about that earlier, the negative comments. There's videos where I purposely call BHO hash because I know that people are going to be like,
you're going to lose their minds.
They're going to lose their minds. And it's funny for me, because a lot of people know, I like to troll at times too. You know what I mean? I'm not always. I don't take life as serious. You know what I mean?
What is the definition of? Because hash comes from hashish, Obviously, that's the full word of hash. What is the actual definition
Well, dude, it's
of
like
hashish?
it's like generational. So when I say hash, like I try not to say hash around my dad because he's like, man, hash had opium in it, bro.
If you
Like,
look-
what are you talking?
Hash had opium.
Like
Oh,
Lebanese
God.
hash, bro.
Jesus.
Like was like
if you
that
look up
wasn't what it was.
Yeah, that's hilarious. If you look up the definition, it'll probably say something like a resinous extract of cannabis plant or separated trichomes.
So an
Something-
extract. Thanks, Jess. You should already done this.
So it
is an extract of the cannabis plant containing concentrations of the psychoactive resins. So it's all hash.
So
You know
again,
what I mean?
for people that are
In a
purists,
sense.
for people that are purists
Yeah.
and they want to
They want the
degrade BHO because they think they're better than it or whatever, that's fine.
Yeah.
I don't care. I smoke it all. Like
Yeah.
especially like OGs aren't washers. Typically OGs aren't washers. So like I'm an OG. I love OG. Like what? I'm just not gonna ever smoke OG. It's just all got to be rosin. Whatever yields for rosin. You know what I mean? It doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like most of the time, like when you're blasting like some fire OG live resin,
Yeah.
like that, I'm smoking that 100 times.
Well,
If it's properly made and it's good flour,
Dude.
and it's separated, you're just separating resins from the plant. You know what I mean? How we do that? And
dude, if it smells good, I'm fucking smoking it. From
Bro.
flour to hash to fucking whatever the fuck.
If you walked into a secret cup in like 2016 or that time period, if you walked in there and just said to every person you met, man, BHO isn't hash.
You get punched in the face.
No, people would just be like, well, then what is, bro?
I guess so. Yeah.
That's a great point.
Tables of BHO, bro. Like I come from an era when that was the cutting edge of hash. I just don't
That's a great
understand how
point.
people.
Yeah,
that's a
like,
great point.
Well, and you're right, because there is a generation that never saw like the cannoli hash, the temple balls,
Yeah.
the old
tips.
black brown fucking bricks. I mean, there's a whole generation that just never experienced that.
We've come a long way in a short time, if you really think about it. You know what I mean? Even
That's
from
interesting.
even from then, you know what I mean? But even before that, like why was it so big and popular is because, traditionally that's what hash was, is like those dark, temple balls, right?
Yeah,
Which
100%.
and we didn't even know how to properly consume it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
Hot knifing, dude.
Yeah, and I mentioned that No Melt Nebraska. You know what I mean? It was like, early, before the BHO days, it was like if it wasn't full melt, then it, it left the, that char on the nail, right? And it's like, nobody wants to smoke that shit.
And you know what's even crazier, man, is like I was smoking hash before there was dab rigs. Before that, you could walk into a smoke shop and buy a nail. Like people don't know what a
You're doing
domeless
the knife-
nail is.
the
Remember
knife
the
tech.
domeless nail
Yeah.
and how innovative that was?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like fucking
Or the beehive, like the fucking yeah.
The nectar collector or whatever.
the
No,
nectar
that was
collector,
yeah.
like all this, like
No, I'm talking about the domeless nail, the one that you didn't need a dome for.
yeah.
Is that what you're talking about?
I was remember
Okay.
the innovation,
The
with
dome and
and
nail
the cap.
Yeah.
Remember, like that was the coolest thing, and then
Yeah.
they figured out how to make an e-nail. And
Yeah.
like, dude, if you had an e-nail, bro, you were the fucking coolest motherfucker. Like, dude, if you went over to somebody's house to buy a bag or buy some hash,
Just hot
and they
all the
had-
time.
and they had an
hot and
e-nail,
ready.
like you were like, dude, you fucking do
The
it
amount
for
of
real,
fucking,
bro.
the amount of burns that I got from my email just always
Yes,
hot.
that was the original hot and ready. Was
Yeah.
the e-nail.
100%, bro, 100%.
That fucker. Oh.
Oh,
I just
man.
it's so strange because I remember making hash on my fucking stove in like 2012, like just experimenting, and it just where it is now and how people can walk around and say that something is better than the other, like is just insane to me.
Well,
yeah. It's first of all, whatever makes something better than the other is still going to be the starting material.
that's subjective.
It's going to be the
also
starting.
subjective because you got your
Very
people
true.
that are like, I hate Blue Dream or whatever the fuck, you know what I mean? And yeah,
Yeah,
so
that's it's always going to be the flour. The way that you separate the resins from the plant is, I mean, I don't think it's there's such a division that I don't think it's that serious. You know what I mean? And
Right.
part of like Extraction Academy, you know, in the name, like the idea of this was to gather the best minds in extraction, and that's all forms of extraction. Talk about psilocybin, talk about, you know, solventless water hash, you know, you can talk about, BHO, insert whatever you want. And that's part of the branding. And I didn't want to limit myself. I didn't want to be
the next.
I didn't want to be Nevada Academy. That's just like limiting. You know what I mean? I didn't want to build that I wanted to be more blanketed, because I've seen how industries go and industries work, and I've had conversations with other people to help build out more curriculum for other forms.
So is that the future of Extraction Academy, is going to go into other forms of
100%,
extraction,
100%.
different stuff, psilocybin,
100%.
That's dope.
Yeah, that's always been the goal. This in itself is the first class that we've, you know, formalized with a book, and
so this is
the
you
digital
structuring it and getting it all.
This is the learning curve. You know, now
direction.
it's, you know,
That's dope.
We've also taught Introduction to Distillation, which is just short, you know, mostly just short, focused on the entire process of short path distillation. And we taught that class. You know, Saturday was Intro to BHO, and we make crude in that class, and then Sunday we would distill it. So they got to see the entire process, right? So second class or second project after this is launched is Intro to Distillation. Also in the works, we have Intro to Solventless. So just once we have those kind of three base, 101s, then we're gonna, you know, we would like to collaborate with other minds in the industry that maybe specialize in certain areas and bring the advanced versions of those courses as an offering.
Well,
as well.
and then, you know, my mindset too, you could even go into branding and marketing. You know what I mean? Branding and marketing for cannabis. Yeah, I mean, you could teach people how to, you know, these immature markets that are coming up. Half of them don't know how to brand themselves. Half of them don't know how to, you know, go about packaging, go about, you know what I mean, hardware, go about all these things that make them a legitimate brand. So, I mean, you could even tap into stuff like that.
Yeah, no, 100%.
That's dope.
That's a big passion of mine. Like I designed that cover, you know, and like, you know, I'm not a graphic designer, but you know,
I got to show you something with your background. We had something similar, and we didn't even realize it until after we made it. But yeah, no, it's cool. We like that style.
Yeah, but just marketing in general. You know, I have a degree in marketing. You know, so it's always been something I've like been passionate about, and you know, a lot of friends in the industry that have creative agencies that I lean on a lot. Shouts out to Yellow Brick Group. They kill it. You know, they do a ton of different marketing, and you know, not just for cannabis brands, but I learned a lot just, you know, working with them and hiring them to do certain things, and just kind of getting the soak up game from them. But marketing and branding, and you know, media, content creation, creative strategy, that's something that, you know, that was always kind of my, you know, my lane, you know, within cannabis. I fully understand extraction, you know what I mean? But like the way my mind thinks is not the engineer mind. My mind thinks like the creative, right? You know, and that's kind of like, that's always been something like, you know, I mentioned other companies reaching out to me. I would love to help out other people and you know, give them the blueprint on, you know, how I was able to finish and complete this massive task, which was,
how can people,
you know,
that's, I guess, a perfect segment. How can people get a hold of you? How can people find you, watch you, get a hold of you?
So you can always check out our website, extractionacademy.com. You can always hit me up on an email, Erik, ERIK, at extractionacademy.com. You know, usually respond within, you know, 24 to 48 hours.
And they can stalk you on Instagram?
At Extraction Academy. TikTok at Extraction Academy, and then my personal Instagram, which I'm a lot more active on, is Erik, ERIK.extracts, and I'm a lot more active on that just because of, you know how it is with the IG. So, you know, the EA page has been, you know, something that we've had since we're posting educational content on there since like 2015, so it has a large, like, you know, solid following of, you know, real, you know, concentrated, you know, people that are interested in what we're doing. So I don't want to fucking lose that, but I'm a lot more active on my personal.
I'm really hoping that industry safe space becomes available somewhere socially online. So yeah, we'll see. But for now, everybody's still on Meta platforms. So yeah, be careful what you post. And fuck yeah. Well, thank you, dude. Thank you so much for coming out. Like I said, it's super, you know, humbling, and it's an honor to have you fly in to bullshit with us and smoke with us. And yeah, man, I wish you so much luck in your future. And I think you're going in the right direction. And, you know, like I said, I'm super admire what you've done as one of the original, one of the first, one of the pioneering educators in just the small extraction space. I think that's super cool. And yeah.
Dude,
wish you the best.
Dude, thank you so much, man. I really appreciate our time. I appreciate our conversation. And if you ever come to Vegas, definitely hit me up.
Yeah.
If you ever need anything, dude, let me know.
Oh, yeah. We roll in usually around BizCon, but as BizCon kind of, we'll see if they continue. You know what I mean? But we'll still have to
do some video content when we're out there.
Yeah, find a reason to come up there for sure, man. Thank you so much for coming out, and hell yeah, hopefully enjoy your trip while you're out here.
Welcome to the Pharm table.